Sunrise Interviews is brought to you by Valley Strong Credit Union.
Welcome back. Your time now is 6:18, and for the last several weeks, we've seen so many different headlines from George Floyd to other protests across the country, and it has led to several movements across our nation. And no matter where you look, whether it be TV or social media, everyone is talking about the injustices across our country. And joining us now to talk more about how you as parents can discuss this difficult topic with your children is Jessica Burzloff. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. Good morning, Jessica. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about this. For several weeks now, we have been talking about the racial injustices across our country. It has dominated not only the airwaves, but again, social media. And I know that wherever you look, this is the topic that people are talking about. It is in churches. It is in the media. It is everywhere. It is at family gatherings. It is at the dinner table. You cannot escape this topic. And the reason why I think a lot of people are talking about it, and I've heard from several people, is this seems different. What's going on across our country, what we're seeing is different. So when you're talking about these topics, they're heavy. They are heavy, and some of the videos that we've seen are very graphic in nature. How do you talk to your children about this with, keeping sensitivity at the forefront?
Right. So I think there's a few things to consider. One is the age and developmental stage of the child. So obviously with kids who are older and more tuned in, and I mean even as young as 4 or 5 years old, are kind of sensitive to what's happening and can pick up on news stories and adult conversations, you're going to treat that a little differently than you would treat talking to a toddler about these issues. But the most important thing, regardless, is to talk to them about it. They know something's happening. If they're kids who are Black or Latinx or, people of color, otherwise, they already know. I mean, they have been imbued with this from the beginning, and it's kind of white kids that are waking up to that there's something going on. So the first part is to kind of understand how old your child is as to what would be appropriate to explain to them. But so for smaller children, kind of like I talked last time, start with stories, make sure they are exposed to people of color and see that our community is a bright rainbow and everybody's different and that we need to celebrate differences. In terms of the actual protests and kids who are a little older and maybe asking questions about what they're hearing or seeing on the news or hearing their adults in their lives talk about, the first and most important thing we have to emphasize is that this is about racism. That racism has been an unfortunate part of our country from the beginning, and we are having this conversation now because we have got to, as a country, figure out a way to reckon with this horrible legacy that we have and move forward. But kids need to know what racism is, that it's treating people differently just because of the color of their skin, and that it's unacceptable, and that this is why people are going to the streets, and that that the protests are positive, that they're pushing us forward and helping us get to a better society.
If you are someone who is not a person of color and you are trying to understand, listen about what's going on, how can you take what you're going through and talk to your kids about it as well, if you yourself are trying to understand and learn from this?
Yes, and that's and I think that's an important point, is I am not a person of color. I do not walk through my life experiencing any type of racism. I've been extremely privileged in my existence to not have to deal with anything like that. And so as a person who has a lot of privilege and has a lot of opportunity, what I have been trying to do personally is educate myself, reading and Googling and reading articles and listening to podcasts and watching TED Talks about, from people of color who are talking about their experiences and telling us what we can do differently. And so I've been reading and educating myself. But a couple of things that I think are important to remember here. One, these are not easy conversations to have. I have brought this up with my 5-year-old a few different times. We've talked about it. I have been inelegant. I've stumbled over my words and thoughts, but I do it anyway because it's that important. The other thing that I would encourage people to do, especially white people, white parents, if you don't know, if your child has a question about something and you don't know the answer, Google it together. model a spirit of curiosity about wanting to get in there and learn and understand, and demonstrate for them how to do that. Google it, buy a book, watch something on YouTube that might explain their question, and together you guys can learn. And that's a great way to bond with your child anyway.
All right, Jessica Bersloff, thanks so much for joining us to kind of help us, walk through these difficult times, especially as parents are trying to comprehend what's going on as well. So thanks so much, Jessica, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.